There's research from the Framingham Heart Study showing that your spouse's health behaviors influence your own health outcomes. So, being married to someone who creates chronic stress is worse for your health than being single.
And that chronic emotional load is definitely connecting and driving biology in the wrong direction.
So, I look at their home environment first, not the gym, not their meal plan, their home.
So you can't supplement your way out of that. We really have to address again that root cause and that foundational home environment. Longevity isn't built in perfection, it's actually built in the imperfect, consistent choices you make at home. Welcome back to the Everyday Longevity Collective. I'm Dr. Shoma Datta-Thomas. I'm a board certified OBGYN, minimally invasive surgeon, and now practice as a longevity medicine specialist. I also am currently the VP of Medical Operations at Next Health.
I'm Dr. John Thomas, a human performance and sports rehab focused chiropractor with a master's in exercise physiology. I've owned and operated my own multi generational family practice for over 20 years, working with everyone from professional athletes to weekend warriors and everyone in between.
In episode 2, we talked about those small habits that build the foundation for movement, diet, sleep, and stress management. But today, we're going even deeper into something rarely discussed in longevity circles.
Here's what we've realized after decades of clinical practice: you can have the perfect protocol, the right supplements, the ideal workout plan, but if your home environment isn't working for you, none of it sticks.
And today, we're getting honest and personal. We'll even talk about our experiences with our blended family of 4 daughters, 2 demanding careers in longevity medicine, our family first and faith based family principle, and the messy reality of building health when you're not perfect.
Because that's real life, and that's where health span is actually built. So let's dig in.
So let's start with something I feel I see clinically every day. When someone comes in with labs are showing elevated cortisol, poor insulin sensitivity, suppressed hormones, high inflammatory markers, the numbers tell me what's wrong, but they don't really tell me the why. So, what do you look for when you see your patients and understanding that why?
So I look at their home environment first, not the gym, not their meal plan, their home. So here's a typical pattern: someone comes in with chronic low back pain. We fix the mechanics, strengthen the right muscles, get them moving well. And then 3 months later, they're back. So why? Because when I dig up into their home life, I realize they're sleeping on a sagging mattress, sitting on a couch for hours every evening, eating dinner standing up at around 9 p.m. at the counter, going to bed stressed about work, no time with friends and family, and no recovery, no margin, and no joy. So the home environment is undermining everything we are doing clinically. So, and here's what's fascinating: there's research from the Framingham Heart Study showing that your spouse's health behaviors influence your own health outcomes more powerfully than many individual factors.
So, your home environment is literally shaping your biology. So, when you're working with someone, what patterns are distinguishing people whose home lives are supportive, stable, nourishing, and versus those whose homes are quietly working against them?
So, people whose home lives support durability have some form of predictable rhythm, not perfection, but patterns they can count on. Moments of genuine connection with family or friends, boundaries around work, even if imperfect, some intentionality about rest and recovery, support systems, a partner who encourages health, long term friendships, groups who enjoy healthy activities together. People whose home quietly works against them, everything is reactive, no patterns, no rhythm, always in crisis mode, complete isolation, trying to do it all alone. Work never stops, emails at midnight, always on, no recovery time, constantly pushing without rest. Relationships that create stress rather than buffer it. So the biggest pattern is intentionality versus autopilot chaos. The difference isn't money or resources, it's deciding that some things matter enough to protect.
From the clinical side, I've learned a lot about asking patients a day in their life. So tell me what happens from morning to night. And it's very revealing. Everything changes once I actually understand their day-to-day life. And so I can look at labs easily and correlate numbers to poor insulin sensitivity, elevated lipids, high inflammation markers, again, elevated cholesterol, even suppressed hormones like our testosterone, suboptimal thyroid function. But again, when I really look to see the why, that's where the home environment is coming in quite a bit and very strongly. So when they walk me through their day, I'm listening for factors like, are they prioritizing the pillars? Diet, movement, stress management, sleep. Where is that possible for them? Are they working till 10 o'clock and then scrolling through social media until midnight? Do they have downtime with their partner, their family? Do they ever laugh, decompress, really give themselves time to connect with those close to them? Or is everything just logistics, to do list, and no in between? So, a really powerful example was shown through research done by Cicchiola and Luthar, showing that chronic psychological stress, especially that invisible mental load of managing a household, actually keeps our evening cortisol very elevated when we really want it to drop. And that's where we see disrupted sleep architecture, suppressed reproductive hormones. And then where I see that clinically showed up is a typical, say, woman in her 40s now coming in unexplained weight gain, fatigue, brain fog, the labs showing all of those abnormalities I discussed before. And when I ask about the home life, that's when it really kind of comes out and we uncover she's maybe the primary earner, the breadwinner, managing all the household logistics. Caring for aging parents is something that comes up very commonly with this generation. Getting very minimal sleep, no support, no downtime, no joy. And that chronic emotional load is definitely connecting and driving biology in the wrong direction. So, all of the hormones, the inflammation markers, the lipids, the insulin markers, they're all affected. And it's again because of this home based architecture. So, you can't supplement your way out of that. We really have to address again that root cause and that foundational home environment.
So that invisible mental load is huge. What about evening routines? How does that show up for you clinically?
Well, I know you talk about evening rhythm with your patients quite a bit. Do you want to talk about that?
Sure. If someone's evenings are work until late, household management until 10 p.m., collapse into bed exhausted, they're never down regulated. So cortisol levels never drop, no parasympathetic activation, and no recovery. So honestly, we struggle with this too. With our work schedules, we don't do weekday family dinners. Our professional hours don't allow for that. During the week, most of our time is spent with the little ones that is at bedtime. And sometimes nighttime is the only time we can connect and decompress as a couple. So we know that we should be in bed earlier, but we also need that time together where we can decompress and self regulate. So we're not standing here telling you we're perfect, but we've learned what non negotiables protect us. For our kids, consistent sleep schedules, same bedtime, same wake time, bedtime routines that can create emotional safety, reading, connection, and give proper wind down. For us as a couple, moments of genuine connection, even if brief. So, laughter, we protect joy, even when stressed. Acknowledging each other's efforts, recognition matters biologically. So, resolving conflict faster than we used to, and chronic tension, because chronic tension is toxic. The lesson for everyone listening is your home is where health behaviors are either reinforced or undermined. It's where stress patterns become chronic or get resolved. It's where sleep happens or doesn't. It's where emotional safety exists or doesn't. So you can have the perfect protocol, but if your home environment does not support it, you're swimming upstream.
So let's talk about something we don't see discussed in longevity spaces, how relationships, especially marriage, partnership, affect health outcomes. And what does the research actually show?
So the research is remarkable and often surprising. The Framingham Offspring Study tracked thousands of people for decades and found something critical. Marital quality predicts cardiovascular disease and mortality independent of all traditional risk factors. So here's what they found: women experiencing marital strain had 2.9 times higher risk of coronary heart disease, significantly elevated risk of death from all causes. This was after controlling for blood pressure, cholesterol, smoking, diabetes, and obesity. The relationship quality mattered more than whether you were married or not. So, being married to someone who creates chronic stress is worse for your health than being single. So, what this means biologically: chronic relationship stress creates cortisol dysregulation, elevated inflammation, CRP and IL-6, elevated blood pressure, impaired immune function, poor sleep quality, unhealthy coping behaviors. So, supportive relationships provide physiological buffer against stress, better health behaviors, emotional regulation, resilience to external stressors. But here's what's even more powerful. Research published in Comprehensive Psychoneuroendocrinology found that when couples work on health behaviors together rather than individually, adherence increases by 50 to 70%. Why? Because you're not swimming against the current at home. You have built in accountability with your partner. You support each other's efforts instead of undermining them. Your relationship itself becomes a health asset. So, for us personally, the research reinforces what we've experienced. When our relationship is strong, we both sleep better, we make better health choices, we have more patience with the kids, we have more resilient to the external stresses. And when it's strained, everything suffers. So, the relationship is the foundation, everything else is built on that.
And I would say just this really underscores really any relationship, I think it's fair to say. So, whether it's a friendship, a romantic relationship, I would say even thinking of work relationships and environments, really those relationships do matter and they can affect our emotional health, but also we see can also really be tying into our metabolic health. And you really want to think of health optimization as something that has to be done in connection to others. It can't be done in isolation. So, if a relationship is undermining sleep, creating chronic stress, it's really not supporting your health goals and it's becoming an uphill battle. But when you're aligned, you reinforce each other's health, reinforce each other's mental and emotional health, and both can live longer, healthier lives. But on the other hand, when you're aligned, you are reinforcing each other's physical health, emotional and mental health, and can lead to both supporting longer, healthier lives.
Let's get personal. We have a blended family, four daughters across 2 decades of parenting. That has shaped how we think about health and our family systems. So, what blended life has taught me is health isn't individual, it's relational. So, our family structure is we have two older daughters in their 20s. We're both are starting careers and living independently. And then we have two grade school daughters together, four kids across vastly different developmental stages. What this changes for me is I used to think health was about optimizing myself, my workouts, my diet, my recovery. But in a blended family, you realize your health is interconnected with everyone else's. So if one kid is struggling, it affects the whole household. If one parent is depleted, everyone feels it. You can't be selfish about your health, but you can't be a martyr either.
So, where we've had to adapt is modeling versus controlling. So, for our older kids, we know we can't control all their choices. They're adults, but we can talk through with them and model what sustainable long term habits look like as adults.
So younger, like with our younger kids, we're building foundational habits through what they see us doing on an everyday basis. So they see us exercise, eat well, go to church, serve others, and spend time with friends. So family transitions create real psychological stress. Research from Carnegie Mellon shows that family role transitions like kids leaving for college, schedule changes, new phases of life significantly increase cortisol and inflammatory markers.
We've really tried to manage transitions, especially in this way. So we'll talk very openly with each other, or even with our family or our extended family, our caretakers in our home, just asking for help or dine time when we need it. We give each other grace. So adjusting expectations based on really what's going on. Temporary changes in work schedules, temporary needs of our family members, extended or close, or, sometimes have to prioritize one kid's needs over the other. But we protect those anchors whenever we can, just because when everything else is chaos, we have those solid foundation points to go to.
So the lesson for us is family systems either support your health or undermine it. You have to be intentional.
Also, in thinking of this all from a longevity medicine perspective, it's how we all of these practices kind of lead to our emotional safety with a partner, with a parent. So we really think of it as the foundation of every other health behavior, because without that strong foundation, again, Our sleep is suffering, our hormones are out of balance, and we're really looking to create that emotional safety in the relationship. So, the first factor, predictable support, knowing your partner has your back, knowing it's consistent, there's follow through on commitment. Two, in those conflict situations, they don't get escalated. So I think, we'll be married 10 years this year, thinking through that, the goal should really be when conflicts arise, because inevitably they do, how do we get to a common ground more quickly? I, especially, am someone who kind of used to stew and, really need a long time. And I have found that, that really doesn't make much sense because we're in this together now. So how do we get to that resolution phase? Chronic unresolved intention can be biologically toxic. And the research, as we mentioned, does show how the marital conflict keeps elevated stress hormones going for days. And then recognition and acknowledgement is something I think we have come to develop between the two of us, thanking each other, acknowledging efforts, not just outcomes, and even celebrating the small wins and those small thoughts. And sometimes, actually, those are sometimes more meaningful for our partner than we realize. So that type of acknowledgement lowers our cholesterol, increases oxytocin, strengthens relationship satisfaction. Funny enough, that for me, that was actually a habit I saw in actually some younger family members of mine, younger cousins, and they had a very, very long term relationship. But I realized there was still a lot of please and thank you, just commonplace and everyday. And I realized, wow, that really doesn't go away, and that acknowledgement is still important to create that happy relationship, which is just so foundational for the home. And then also, as a fourth factor, creating the space for individual needs. This can be really tough when you have a pretty active, robust, family life. But we do try to actively support each other's time, either, the boys' nights, the girls' nights, the times, also then balanced out with the mutual friends. And then also just making sure that we each as partners can pursue our individual interests, hobbies, and make time for those as much as reasonable. We obviously, there's no perfect formula, but as much as we can. When we're thinking about the kind of emotional safety for parents, thinking of our kids, how we've accomplished that is also kind of offering, consistent, stable home lives, stable routines where we can. Again, we mentioned protecting things like sleep schedule. As we mentioned, bedtime ends up being a lot of our time with them during the week, but really prioritizing that and making it the best we can with really connected conversation, consistency, kind of making sure there's a little bit of fun in there too. And then really making sure that our weekend time or our time off of the clock, really balances out that more limited time during the weekdays so that they know, we're a solid presence for them, that we are always going to be their rock, and also can be members of the family that they have fun with. For the older kids, of course, we do want to get across the fact that beyond the work ethic, that there are sometimes struggles and there's imperfections as adults and still a lot of learning along the way, especially with health, that it's sometimes an experiment and an ever changing practice evolving with our schedules, our needs, and not just one particular destination. One way, funny enough, that we actually protect how we show up for our kids is and this is definitely something that is a blessing and very thankful for, but we do have a weekly date night. So it was put into our wonderful au pair schedule that we do have a date night once a week. So that could be anything from, a fancy dinner, and sometimes we'll just turn it into something very, very low key, just coffee, a walk, a workout. But it's really optional, but it definitely gives us a break. I mean, we could easily go a week with never having an adult conversation. So this can offset that. And then what we find is that, number one, the kids know we do this. So it's like, oh, I didn't want to call you. I know you're on date night. Or the little ones say, like, oh, mom and dad are on date night. But I actually do think it is hopefully modeling some healthy behavior. And that wasn't really something, I think, for us growing up in South Asian homes. It just wasn't culturally something there, like affection between the parents or this dating thing. And so, it's just a different time, a different scenario. But for us, we did feel that that was important for our kids to see pretty openly.
So on the weekends, we like to protect that family time. So on Saturdays, again, the mornings will start often with a little cuddle time in the morning with the kids, so with the little ones. We'll try to get out and get some sun on our face in the morning, try to, get ourselves out and walking, get our feet on the grass and try to get some good exposure in the morning and just some general movement. We'll try to get out and get the kids out. We'll sometimes do a little pickleball play on the patio or things just to get us interacting together out in the sun and getting some fresh air to start the day. Then we'll usually go into, adding, making breakfast together, cooking together. Our little ones love to kind of play a role in all of that, whether it's, if it's unloading the dishwasher or helping clean up while we make breakfast together. A lot of those things are just activities that we like to do together in the morning that start our day as without screens and without other distractions, where our time is together. A lot of times during the weekend, we will also spend time doing activities together, whether it's going to the playground, bike riding, going to the gym together. The girls love making little obstacle courses. We get a chance to interact together with them. So it's a good way for us to connect. That's something physical. So it's feeding our soul that way, as well as just general interaction where they see us doing positive things together. When it comes to Sundays, we often go to church on Sundays as a family. A lot of it, as even beyond the religious, is a moment for us to show gratitude, to reflect on our week and say the things that we're thankful for, and to think about others, to think about the other people in our lives who might be struggling, who may need a prayer or some thoughtful reminders about that. So just having ourselves again take a moment to be grateful and taking a moment to think outside of ourselves and to look to our family and friends who may also need that thought.
So let's talk about practical design, the physical layout of our home. Is this supporting or draining? What routines, boundaries, and rhythms are actually working, and how is that tying into the physical environment of your home, translating in health behaviors? So, one great example is lighting. Lighting for circadian health means dim lights in the evening. So, maybe going to dimmer lamps, candles, no overhead lights after a certain period of time in the evening, and then by contrast, bringing out the brighter light exposures for the day. So, opening all blinds as soon as you wake up, sometimes in more cold environments, even light boxes, or having to put in some artificial lights to create that contrast. But this really does support circadian rhythm, even if sleep timing isn't perfect. And then, talking about spaces, really lay out boundaries for different functions. So, the bedroom can be somewhere that is reliably cool, dark, quiet, that's really trying to be ultimately a sanctuary for sleep only. For the kids' rooms, somewhere that they can have fun, but also can eventually become a calming environment for them. And then for anybody who is working, separating any working spaces from resting spaces at home, especially now that there's a lot more working from home routines or hybrid routines out there. A big one that we really double down on is the movement accessibility. So, a home gym, if that's something that is accessible and possible in budget or space, and it could be even as simple as resistance bands in the living room, a stretch mat that's always out. What we find is when it's really already something that you're coming across in your environment, it's really reminding you of the practice and you're more apt to do it. We've made movement really a normal part of life. It's not a barrier to entry that we've put into place. And research does show that the environmental design will beat that willpower every time. So I always talk also to patients about when we're starting to think of exercise, whether it's optimizing a routine or just getting started, what is the biggest way to make it convenient and enjoyable? And so, if it's something that you can even design your home around, that is really optimizing that convenience over willpower concept. And if you have time to think about doing the healthy thing, you'll probably talk yourself out of it. So, if it's an automatic, you're more likely to fall into that practice. So, removing friction from our healthy choices, making that healthy choice the default. So, what about exercise as the family? This is really something we enjoy. Is there research that's actually supporting this?
Absolutely. And the research is powerful. A study published in JAMA Pediatrics found that children whose parents are physically active are significantly more likely to be active themselves. So, specifically, children with two active parents were 5.8 times more likely to be active. Children with one active parent were 3.5 times more likely to be active. The effect was independent of socioeconomic status, access to facilities, or neighborhood walkability. So, what this means is modeling matters more than mandating. How this shows up in our family. In our home, my morning anchor is mobility and reflection in the morning, whether that means prayer, whether that means setting intentions for the day before anyone else is awake, and then 5 minutes of some type of mobility, and maybe even in bed while I'm just still lying there, where I'll realign my spine, do some pelvic tilts, pull my knees, stretch out my back, and then actively engage and wake up my body before I start loading my spine and the rest of my limbs. Then a few minutes of, again, setting intentions for the day, a reflection for what I'm trying to accomplish for the day, and maybe even a prayer for myself and my family and friends. If I skip it, I'm reactive. I'm impatient and physically tend to be tight all day. Then, when it comes to the kids, we don't force the kids to exercise. We invite them to join us. They watch what we do. We do take family hikes, we do ski trips, we play pickleball together. They see us prioritize movements as adults. So they see us exercising, we take them to the gym with us. So we do a lot of physical activities together, and so that they find an appreciation for it and enjoy doing it themselves. And over time, it becomes their normal. So for our older kids, they've now built their own movement practices, right? Not because we've lectured them, but because they've watched us do it for years and they've seen the benefits themselves. For our younger kids, we're teaching them that movement isn't punishment, it's play. We're building mobility, dexterity, strength through games and activities. We talk about work ethic and taking care of our body. They like to see the results themselves. They like to see themselves being more flexible, being able to run faster, lift more things, be more agile, do more push ups, things like that. Encourages them and keeps them motivated. For our older kids, they've learned through practice. From doing things with us actively as kids, they found their own things that they find passion doing. So whether it may be taking classes, whether it may be doing exercise on their own, strength training and seeing the gains that way, um, it's not because we've lectured them, it's because they've found the enjoyment in it themselves and enjoy the results that come from it. So whether that gives them an outlet for stress or for anxiety or for just letting off a little steam after a long day, these are all positive behaviors that help you offset the stresses of daily activity. So, this isn't just about burning calories, it's about building a family culture where movement is normal, joyful, and lifelong. So, what about eating meals together? We've talked about how hard that is during a week for us. What does the research show?
Well, yeah, this is an area we're still working on because family meals are one of the most well researched longevity interventions. And it can be difficult, especially with working parents or changing schedules. And actually, even kids' activities can make this challenging. But research out of Columbia does find children with regular family meals have lower disordered eating, better academic performance, lower rates of depression and substance use, and healthier eating patterns that do translate into adulthood. And so, what we see is these family meals do matter. This is where connection happens naturally, talking, laughing, and even solving problems together. I think, really, in these generations struggling a little bit more with isolation, perhaps socially, family can be where they can release or, release any worries, thoughts, maybe even commiserate, get advice. And so, that dinner table is really important. It's also a chance for us to model healthier eating, healthy choices without lecturing and just choosing our own choices to show them, I guess, in terms of some guidance. Metabolically, it's a time to sit down together, to get into that parasympathetic nervous system state together. It promotes our digestion, even it helps our satiety, it's less stress eating. So, even metabolically, it's supportive. And behaviorally, again, as we said, the family time together is beneficial. It is also linked to showing consumption of more whole foods, vegetables, decreasing processed foods, and maybe taking time to eat together. together, which again, we know is helpful for appetite, satiety, and digestion. And again, our reality is we are still trying to figure out those perfect schedules to get the weekday dinners. We do them pretty much separate from the kids right now. And we've just had to go and go forward with what we can do and let go of any guilt around that. That's just the reality of what it is. And then we've found a balance for us that we know that the weekends have then become sacred in a way in terms of getting that time together, the Saturday breakfast, the Saturday and Sunday, bigger meals with our older girls when they're visiting with the extended family, and everyone's sitting down and we're trying to get the focus off of screens, phones, TV, and again, having time to connect, and kind of understand what's going on with each other, maybe help each other through some problems. Again, really emphasizing the gratitude, the centering, and then also this is a time where we expect our the whole family to be cleaning up, setting up, kind of taking on that responsibility together. So even if it's just something that's in the weekend, we've realized it is something that compounds over time. We see those habits pour into how the kids conduct themselves now that either for our older girls who are now living in their own apartments and homes and taking care of their own meals and faces, and also seeing the little girls kind of carry out the habits during the week when we're not there for every meal. So, another important aspect then is really staying connected to communities. And I think I've really seen a lot of attention on this and a lot of understanding of this importance, especially after pandemic. So, how does that fit into how we design home life for health span?
So, community connection is as powerful as any medical intervention. Research from Brigham Young's meta analysis of 148 studies with over 300,000 participants found that lack of social connection increases mortality risk by 26%, comparable to smoking 15 cigarettes a day. So, how we build community into our home design, like a faith community, church on Sunday mornings is non negotiable for us. But any kind of community like that can also feed that same system. So it serves multiple purposes: spiritual grounding, multi-generational connections, and fostering service opportunities. The kids see us prioritize something beyond ourselves. And that makes it much more manageable for things that they're dealing within their own lives. When you take the focus off yourselves, you realize that, the problems you may have may not be as complicated or as life altering as they may seem in the moment. So, extended family is also big for us. We have regular time with grandparents, multi generational dinners. The kids learn from their elders, so which research shows improves emotional regulation and perspective. Our friend networks are also very important to this factor. We actively support each other's time with friends, like Dr. Dada mentioned, boys' nights, girls' nights, couple time with mutual friends. Outside connections reduce isolation and they help buffer stress. Another big focus for us is service and charity. We involve the kids in service projects, whether it's donating food to the local food pantry, teaches also empathy, gratitude, and again, thinking beyond yourself. Research shows altruism improves mental health and longevity.
I would also add on incorporating grandparents into a regular part of the kids' lives is we have also seen how that impacts our parents. And that is certainly a reverse aging situation. And really, we see before our eyes the longevity and the brightness and vitality in both of our parents who are heavily involved with the grandkids. So it's really such a great bidirectional mutual benefit for their development and longevity.
So, the key: you can't design a healthy home in isolation. You need supportive relationships outside your household, multi generational connections, and purpose beyond just your immediate family. So, community isn't a luxury for longevity, it's a requirement.
One note I would make about incorporating extended family and family structures, we happen to be lucky in having a lot of family close. I know that's not the scenario for everybody. That's not the scenario I grew up with, but it is, I think, just to say developing those close ties. And it doesn't have to be great in quantity, but even those really high quality connections, as many or as few as they are really important. And whatever role that person plays for you can really tie into the health of you as an individual and for the larger group.
So, let's get really practical. If someone is listening and thinking, my home isn't set up for health, where do I even start? What would you tell them?
Well, I would start with one small thing. not 10, just one. And I know we talk about this a lot with our patients, so jump in. But the mistake I see most people doing, whether, and actually this is patients or family and friends, is that they're just trying to overhaul everything at once. So when we're thinking of the home and trying to set up the good situation that we've been talking about today, don't try everything at once. Perfect meal prep, family dinner, gym membership, new sleep schedule, meditation. This is going to be a sure path to burnout. So really, again, as we talked about in our first episode, picking those small habits in an approachable way. And maybe you think of it kind of going down a checklist of each of the domains that we have covered today. So, for your relationship, again, start that bite size moment that can translate into something bigger. Is there 15 minutes throughout a day where you can make sure there's protected connection? Could it be something as quick as a morning coffee, a quick walk, 5 minutes, just talking off of phones, time off of screens and connecting? And then are there, moments for bigger times that are protected for the relationship? For the time at home all together, is there an anchor you could start with? Maybe it's something in the morning, your moments before the chaos of your home is starting. That could be stretching, prayer, quiet coffee, journaling, something that is just yours. And then for the family, is there maybe one protected meal a week? That's our Saturday pancakes. Is it just once a week? Is it more for you? Is it less often for you? Just something that you're prioritizing as a family to protect together and commit to it. Start with one moment at whatever interval makes sense for you and go from there.
So for movement, invite your family to join you in something active once per week. It could be a walk, playing catch, hiking, dancing in the kitchen. We'll often put on music and just kind of get ourselves moving and just kind of feel the beat. Make movement joyful, not forced. And for community, protect time with one friend or a couple per month. Could be dinner, coffee, workout together. Social connection lowers cortisol and increases longevity. So pick one thing, do it for 66 days. Let's make it automatic. Then add another. And these will slowly build on each other to a bigger picture of health and longevity. So, the way we built and designed our home life was by realizing the challenges that we were dealing with every day. So, early in our marriage, we had young kids, pandemic hit, we had demanding careers, we had blended family dynamics to navigate. We tried to do our best at doing everything perfectly. But what we realized is that we had to collaborate and we had to give each thing its individual time and focus. And what we learned is you can't pour from an empty cup. We have to get ruthless about priorities. What matters most right now? What can we let go of? Where do we need help? And what we learned to was ask for help. Sometimes it was from babysitters or other family members. We said no to commitments that didn't align with our values. We lowered standards on things that don't matter. House doesn't need to be perfect and, always in place at all times. We accepted the things that wouldn't be perfect, and that's okay. Good enough is actually good.
So, things that we're still working on and things that are still imperfect, just to let you all know that this is definitely a work in progress and we're still very transparent about it. Even we talking about it with friends, family, and patients every day, we're still working on a lot on our end too. So, for us, it's the sleep consistency. Again, sometimes we know that we take a hit and that's our time to decompress, and it may be the only time we get all day after a very busy, work routine and getting everything settled at home. But it's a trade-off that we're honest about and, sometimes accept just taking that hit. We are working towards those better weekday meal rhythms. We know the importance of those meals, but again, we're prioritizing where we can do it in the way that we can show up for it. And again, stronger boundaries around evening work. I think both of us have always taken on pretty intensive work goals. And so that can be really fulfilling and great, but just knowing where that challenge is still productive. And that's something, that we're still learning. So a bigger picture. But here's where it matters. We're transparent with our kids about it. We let them know that in many things, in many ways, we are always learning. And health is a practice, it's a big part of our lives. And how we prioritize our home life is a big priority for us, and that we know it's going to be something that we're always working to improve and accept when it's imperfect. The modeling of accepting that imperfection and persistence and maybe re strategizing may be even more valuable to us as individuals and as a couple and to our family than perfection ever could be.
So, how do you help people move from guilt to agency? What does real progress look like? So, I reframe health as something you build, not achieve. So, you're not trying to arrive at some perfect destination. You're building capacity day by day, imperfectly, but consistently. Progress in real families looks like a couple who protects date night even when exhausted, parents who support each other's time and time with friends, a family that laughs together regularly, partners who acknowledge each other's efforts, people who resolve conflict faster than before, households that protect what matters even when everything else is in chaos. So it's not Instagram perfect. It's messy, imperfect, evolving, but real. But it's sustainable. And sustainability creates longevity, not through heroic efforts or extreme protocols, but through small, consistent actions that become the architecture of how you live. Compare yourself to where you were 6 months ago, not to someone else's Instagram.
So let's bring this all together. We've talked about why home is actually where health is built, not necessarily in the labs or gym. How relationship quality affects your biology, maybe more than most supplements. Where family systems either support or undermine longevity. How to design your home environment to make healthy choices easier. And how to start with small, sustainable changes you can start today.
So you don't need to overhaul your entire life. Start with one thing, one morning anchor, 5 minutes of movement, reflection, prayer, or quiet time before the chaos starts. One protected meal per week, even if it's just on the weekends, with no screens and full presence. 15 minutes of undistracted connection with your partner daily. No phones, no logistics. One movement activity with family per week. Make it joyful, not forced. And then one social connection per month. Protect time with friends and community. Pick one. Again, do it for 66 days, then add another. So protect your priorities even when everything isn't perfect.
And we've talked a lot about what's not perfect for us and how we accept that and work with that and make it our own. And that is what real health span looks like, supported by your home architecture. If you found this episode helpful, share it with somebody building health in real life.
Thanks for joining us. We look forward to future conversations.
Stay intentional, stay honest, and remember longevity isn't built in perfection. It's actually built in the imperfect, consistent choices you make at home.
Thanks for listening to the Everyday Longevity Collective. We'll see you next time.